really, I mean, you can technically squeeze 40 line returns at once on here. Everything sounds really, I mean, I could boost 15 dB of some frequencies and it's like, I love it. It sounds great. All right, it has officially been 1 year that I have owned this console sitting next to me. So I figured it's time to do a Trident 68 24 channel analog recording and mixing console review. Let's get into it. So as I just mentioned, I have now had this in my home studio for 1 year. Actually, literally as we're filming this, exactly to the day. I have primarily used this for tracking and recording on productions here in my home studio, live drums, live instruments, vocals, keys, synths, direct, bass, electric guitars, the whole thing. I've really put it through its paces on the recording side, the mic preamps and the EQs, we'll get into all that. And then more recently, I have done a singular mix through it, one mix. So I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with it as we get into this, but this board, as we see it, comes in at $17,500 for this unit, which has 24 channels and 8 monitor returns on it. They also have a 16 channel version, which comes in at, let's see, $13,750. So on the spectrum of recording and mixing consoles, these are actually more affordable for analog consoles. Most of the consoles you're gonna see, especially with this channel count, are gonna come in between the $50,000, $100,000, and $150,000 price point. So take that into consideration when looking at this. I'll put links to this one and the 16 channel version of it down in the description if you want to check those out. Okay, next let's talk about the actual physicality of this console. So if you're gonna get a console, you need to consider the size of it, the aesthetic, what the shape, you know, what this thing's actually gonna be like when you bring it into the room. So the size of this is actually really, really nice. It's not too big and it's not too small, you know, so I'm gonna measure this out. I wanna say it was 3.5 feet. Yeah, so it's about 3 feet 70 inches, 43 inches total width, and then front to back, we're looking around 29 inches, so just about 2.5 feet deep as the footprint for this. This console has this kind of nice, what would you call that tone? Like it's almost like a little bit of a cherry, but not too red. Wood finish. It's pretty durable. This one has, you know, it's sitting in this custom desk that I have, so it doesn't get really any wear and tear on it. It feels solid. The way that these channels are designed is they are in banks of 8. I think they did that for the ease of repairs, but if, you know, channel 3 isn't working and I need to get it repaired, then channels 1 through 8 have to leave. So that would be unfortunate. But again, I've had no issues with it so far. Now, as far as like the rest of the quality physically, you know, I think the meters look really great. They are LED meters and it's got this nice, I don't know if it's glass. It doesn't necessarily feel like glass, but it looks really, really clean. The meters are good, and then you have VU meters on your master output. Yeah, you know, I think it looks really, really nice. Again, for the price range. There are some cheaper consoles, but you're not gonna, they don't look like this. You know, this has like a pretty good aesthetic to it and nice quality. As far as the knob feel, you know, actually turning these knobs and getting your hands on them, very, very well built. Very strong, very durable pots, a lot of resistance on it. Not too much. It feels like a high quality build. Buttons, same thing. Everything switches and feels really nice. I don't get nothing gets stuck. Like these are real, like heavy duty. As far as, I will mention while I'm thinking of it, there's a little bit of noise on the mix insert. So when I go to insert my mix bus, it's a little scratchy, which anyone who's ever used the console ever has experienced. But on the other buttons, I haven't experienced that yet. So no noise on any of the other buttons, just on the mix insert. It's a little scratchy. Faders, fader feel could be better. You know, obviously these are like plastic pieces, so you're gonna get the cost down there. Not a lot of resistance on the faders. So they feel just a little bit of give, but you know, I've felt better. The motorized ones obviously feel really, really good. If you didn't know, there's no automation on this. It is what you set it to. Your increments here are 5 dB, 5 dB, 5, 5, well, all the way down, I guess, on your small fader direct out. So as far as pots being detented, the only things that are detented are the actual boost and cut of the EQs, and you're only getting that at your 0.0. So, you know, you're not gonna get increments on your boost and cuts for being detented. The pots are not detented, the auxes aren't, pans, nothing else is. And then the front shelf here, this feels really, really nice, high quality. I've set a bunch of stuff on it, had it sort of like dig in and leave marks, and then it just kind of goes away after a certain amount of time. Really solid build, not super heavy, heavy for sure, you can't carry it on your own, but my wife and I carried it very carefully up the stairs, around the back of this desk, and put it in ourselves. So with 2 people, pretty easy to transport. So the features. This console, first off, 24 channels on input, okay? So when we talked about getting this console, I really wanted to test and have enough preamps on the front end. So this one has 24 microphone preamps across the input section. You have 24 EQs, one per channel, and they are 3-band EQs. You have 6 aux sends available on each channel. Down here at the end, you have 8 group monitor channels, which all have different features with them, and then you have your monitor section for the whole console, and then you have your aux returns. Now on the channel side, not only do you have the mic pre's, auxes, and EQs, but you also have 8 subgroups down here at your fader. You have direct outs and a monitor level underneath your EQ. So if you are doing any subgrouping or submixing or anything like that, you can use your subgroups 1 through 8 to route them from the channel section over to your subgroup or master monitor section. You have your pans just above your faders. You have your solos right underneath pre-fader and post-fader level solos. And then you also have your left-right stereo bus group as well as your 1 through 8 faders. Each channel, in addition to the 3-band EQ, you have a high-pass filter at 50 Hertz, and then you also have your insert point, your insert button, so you can patch in some outboard gear or EQs or compressors if you'd like. Over on your master monitor section, I'll just walk you through it here. Starting at the top, you have your left-right mix insert. So anything going to your left-right bus, stereo bus, if you're mixing, you can insert something on that patch point. So you can have a mix bus insert. I usually insert my SSL Bus Plus right there on it. Underneath your mix insert button, you have your solo control section to adjust your solo level when you're soloing things. You have your monitor input section where you can select how you're monitoring on the console. What's cool about this is you have 2 alternative monitor inputs to patch stuff into, to patch returns into, and then you have aux in an 1/8 inch input right on the front of the console. So if you want to plug in, you know, your phone or something to play back, you have that input right here on the console. You have your speaker level, alternative monitor out, second set of speakers, and then some mono, dim, have your whole monitor controller built into it. Headphone amp, you can plug your headphones literally into the top of the console. It's very, very loud. And then you have your talkback section to control your talkback level and where you want your talkback to go to. And then obviously your master fader for the console. All right, now let's talk about connectivity of this console. So when I got this, actually before I got it, I dug through the manual and basically memorized the whole thing. I was very nervous and wanted to make sure that I had everything I needed to connect it properly. On the back of this console, you have all of your inputs and outputs to the console. Pretty much every input and output of the console is a D-sub connection. So you will need to have 27 DB25 snakes to get in and out if you want access to each possible patch point, aux sends, aux returns, insert points on the channels, direct outs, all of your group monitor, all of your mix monitor returns. If you want to be able to get in and access every single feature of this, you will need 27 DB25 cables. So that's important to consider. There's also two other outputs on the console, which are XLR outputs, and that's going to be your actual master output of the console, and then you have your master monitor out of the console. So you have 4 XLR outputs in addition to the DB25 outputs. Now, as far as connecting to this, I'm using a patch bay. I have all DB25s go into the back of a DB25 patch bay. I have pretty much everything fully normal, so when you patch into the top, you go all the way right out to the direct outs, and the direct outs normal to my interface inputs. So if I'm going to record through this, my whole patch bay routing is connected, starts at my mic line. So I plug a mic in, it hits channel 1, normals all the way through the channel, going into input 1 of my DAW that I'm using. Now, along that path, you can go in and out a bunch of different insert points. Obviously, microphone, preamp input, line level input. You have your aux sends, you have your insert patch point on each channel, and then you have your direct out here as well. 24 direct outs from your channel section, and then this is actually a really cool flexibility routing thing here. With your 8 channels of group monitors, you can patch into these faders line level and use them as monitor return. So if you're going to use this console for mixing, you can actually return, flip all the channels to line input, and you can return 1 through 24 and 25 through 32. So that's how I have it set up. My DAW output's actually normal to the line inputs. So if I want to return and mix to this, all I have to do is just flip the channels to line input. And then the same thing over here, I have 25 through 32 defaulting to these, and if I want to hear what my return is, you just flip from group setting to monitor return. The group is the default. Let's say I'm routing my drums to 3/4 here. I have 3/4 up as my group, so all of my drum channels are coming up in these 2 faders, but if I want to return from Pro Tools, I just hit monitor return and it flips it from that group master to monitor returns from Pro Tools. And that way I have 32 channels that I can use for mixing, which is really nice to have that flexibility if you need it. And the way that I used it when I mixed on this was actually both. So I had, everything hitting the stereo bus and some things hitting group monitors, and then these channels are set to tape returns from Pro Tools, so I could have multiple different effects returning as well as the submixing on the console. Now, if you really need extra tracks for your mix, you can also return to your aux returns. Now, obviously, if you're patching in effects and you're using it for your aux sends and your aux returns, you can use it exactly like that. But if you have effects you're using in the box, you can patch your in-the-box effects out to return on your aux returns here and save yourself these channels. That way you have 32 channels for mixing, and then you also have your effects returns up top. So really, you can technically squeeze 40 line returns at once on here. That's important to consider if you're really trying to get the bang for your buck with the connectivity and routing on this console. Let's talk about the general use quality. So as I said, I have used this primarily for tracking. And the reason is I'm a tracking engineer and producer, so most of the work I'm doing is on the front end. Most of the attention and quality and things I care about are at the very beginning. This, to me, was 24 new preamps and EQs that can be set and forget, and I used it like that for most of the last 12 months. And the first concern I had was the quality of preamps. I wanted to have high quality preamps. So I actually did a shootout with the preamps I was using before, which were the Warm Audio 73 British style preamps. I'll link a video to that if you want to check it out yourself. I really wound up loving the way the Trident sounded on drums. immediately started using it on drums. Then I slowly started adding in bass and guitar, and with electric guitars, I wanted to test the limits of pushing the pre's and getting as much color and distortion out of them. Even like, let's go as far as we can until past the point of breakup. And you can push these pre's pretty hard, which on cheaper, let's say lower quality preamps, you're gonna have a really hard time doing with, because they'll just sound terrible. So I gotta hand it to them. These preamps sound really good, especially this is the lowest entry point to the Trident consoles. They have the 68, 78, and 88 consoles, and this is the most affordable one, and the preamps sound really, really nice. EQs, same thing. EQs sound really good. Bold and broad EQs. So when you're making a move on here, you're making a broad move. Everything sounds really, I mean, I could boost 15 dB of some frequencies and it's like, kick drum. So these go plus and minus 15 decibels. So this is like, I don't know, 12 dB. I love it. It sounds great. So yeah, nice low end, high end, mid, everything on the EQs sounds good. Okay, so the routing flexibility is pretty good. Now they say that this is a split monitor console. I guess technically you can say that because, you know, you have your input section and then you have this monitor section here, which is your monitor level and a pan and a monitor mute. You have a little EQ to monitor section too, but this only goes to one place, which is your monitor section. You cannot have a mic input and a line input going simultaneously. To me, it's not really an inline console. They call it, I think they call it a split inline console, not split monitor. So what I would love to see, instead of how this is set up, is for this section here to act essentially as your direct out, so that you can have a dual input inline console where essentially you come in at the mic preamp with your microphone, you can use the EQ, and then this can be your direct out level, allowing you to actually come back and return to your fader. So you can use it both on the front end and the back end, tracking and mixing without having to choose one or the other. That is not the case. You could technically use this monitor section while it's in mic mode, but all it's doing is sending to bus, basically. There's arguably uses for that, but that is not in line, so something to consider if you're getting this and you're wanting to do that. Now, you could kind of do an inline thing. You'd be making some compromises, because what you could do is you could take your insert point of the console, essentially take your insert send to your DAW, and then return from your DAW to your insert return, which would mean the bottom section of your channel will be your return from your DAW, and then the top part will be your send. That kind of achieves it. It would just be a lot nicer if you had a little bit of an actual direct out control, because if you did that, obviously you would lose your ability to have a trim on your output. That's sort of the drawback, I think, for the routing on this. Otherwise, if you're just going straight in and you want to do 16 channels, mic pre's as inputs, and then you could return, you know, 17 to 32, it'll work just perfectly for that. So there's, as I said before, a lot of flexibility with what you can do, but if I had to change one thing, I would change that. Now here's why you can't. Because it's $17,000. $17,000 is a lot of money, but compared to a console that has an inline setup, it's less than half the cost. So that's where you're getting your cost saving. It's going to be with some of those limitations on your features. Overall, here are my thoughts on it. For the price, if you're looking to get a console, I think it's important to really know what you want out of that console and to really think it through before you pull the trigger on anything. This is an all analog console, so there is nothing digital. There's no automation, no returns, no integration to any software. This is literally analog in, analog out. So that is going to resonate with a lot of people. A big personal draw for me, both on the front-end tracking and on the mixing. Now, even though I had mentioned before, I've only done one mix on this, that's because I do most of my mixing in the box and my automation in the box. So this is not super useful for my process, especially when it comes to the workflow of switching between songs multiple times per day. Also, because of the nature of my work, I'll be mixing as we're going, committing to decisions, and we'll continue overdubbing stuff sometimes pretty late into the game. So if you are doing an analog mixing project on a console, the best way to do it is to just be totally done recording. And that way you can have all your outputs and your I/O set for the mix, which isn't super conducive to like, hey, we're gonna overdub some drums right now. Most of my workflow, a lot of the mixing is happening in the box, and sometimes I'll use hardware inserts and stuff like that, but that's why I haven't done a ton of mixing on this. Now, I will say the mix that we did on this, technically you could say that I'm mostly using the console as a summing mixer because I had done a mix on the song already, so we are already happy with the sound of it, but then I took that and I spread it out across 32 channels on the console and then changed some balance stuff, added in some EQs, and it just took an already great mix and made it way better. And you can see that video, I'll link it down in the description, mixing on the Trident. I was really impressed. The sounds on this, added a lot to the mix. So let's just pop all these out for a second. Out. If you are a mixer and you're looking to do a lot of mixing and you want to bring a console into the situation, this is a good consideration, in my opinion. The quality and the sound and everything is pretty good. Now, mixing analog on a console introduces some little bugs and quirks and things that maybe will be an adjustment for you if you're not used to it. One, which is you're going to have a higher noise floor than if there is no analog console. If you're mixing digitally, there's no analog noise unless your plugin is giving you a fake version of some noise on it. You're going to have a higher noise floor, especially on this when you monitor pretty loud and you push your master fader up above 0, you're going to hear that noise in the background. Also, when you insert compression and more level on your mix bus, if there's already noise, it's bringing everything up. So when you flip between mix mode on this and you have everything compressed and a lot of gear inserted and plugins and stuff like that, and you're monitoring from the console, and then you flip over to monitoring from your interface, it's going to go from no noise on the interface to noise, and you're going to hear it. Now, I don't actually think that's a problem. For me, it's a little more psychological, where I just hear it and I go, noise. But when you print off mixes, it sounds great. So that's certainly something to consider as well. I was testing some EQs recently on this, and we inserted the EQs on the group monitors as an insert point, because you have inserts on your group monitors, which is great. But I did notice a big noise floor jump and level inserting it over here. I was kind of thought like maybe it was something that I was doing, and then I just basically removed going through the group inserts, and I inserted the EQs on as a hardware insert in the box, and there was no noise increase. So noise floor will be introduced when going through the console. Now, I don't necessarily think it is an issue in the mix, but for me, I'm doing, gear review videos, and if I'm going to review an EQ and the console's introducing noise, I don't want to include that in the video because it's not the EQ that's adding the noise, it's the console. So, important consideration. Now, outside of the noise floor, everything else is really awesome. I had mentioned everything else that I think about the positives and things I would change. After living with this for 1 year, there's only one drawback that I have, and it has nothing to do with the quality or sound of the console. It is simply a practical arrangement of how things are laid out. And that is because I'm mixing mostly in the box. I don't have somewhere that I can put my controller for my automation. So I literally have to set it on top of the console, which I hate. It looks terrible and it's just not conducive. It hides part of the console. So what I would love in the future is to have a version of a console that has a producer desk in the middle, which basically just makes it a split bay design. So I could still have my keyboard and mouse right here in the middle and bring my computer monitor close, but have the console on my left and right. So I could still use all of the features that I love from the console, but actually have my monitor a bit closer to me and have my automation at my fingertips where I need it. So that's everything. That's what all my thoughts. Those are all the features, connectivity, price. There's links to it down below if you want to go and look at the details yourself. If you are interested in getting it, pick up the manual, go through the manual. It's not super long, and it is incredibly helpful to the planning process. I did a few videos on my process of how I plan to get this and how I set everything up. I'll try to put all the links to anything that will be of value in regards to this down in the description. I would love to hear your thoughts, what you think. If you've ever used one of these, if you're on the fence, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. And yeah, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all of that, and we'll see you guys in the next video.